So the date is December 11th in 2017. We're almost at 2018, and we wanted to give uh, so many fans and champions of the movement an opportunity to connect with these two fine gentlemen and good friends of mine, David Mead and Peter Docker, the co-authors of Find Your Why. How's it going, guys?
Lovely.
Wonderful.
It's great to be here.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
So here is what's going to happen in this call. The focus of this conversation, at least our intention, is for us to focus on discovering your individual why. Of course, we want to engage with you guys as much as possible. So we will give you an opportunity to ask any questions you have about the concepts of starting with why, anything you've heard, read, seen, from these two guys, and of course our founder Simon as well. We're going to kick off by doing a couple of poll questions just to understand who's here, what your level of experience is with our work and our content, so that, you know, as my wonderful friend Peter Docker says, context is everything. So before we move into content and answering any questions, let's get the context right. Let's learn a little bit about you, albeit through a poll, before we dive in and start answering questions. We do have a couple questions that we have prepared. So many people wrote in both to our website and on social media, so we'll start there. And then we will open it up and really hear from you guys. You can type in your questions using the Q&A, and we will dive into those questions. So before we go any further, I want to introduce a few people. First and foremost, I'm going to put him on the spot because he is working behind the scenes. And you actually, if you've written into our website, you've probably heard back from him. His name is Jeffrey Baran, and he is going to be handling all the Q&A behind the scenes. So Jeff, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you could maybe come off video and just wave to the thousands of people we have here. There he is. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, everybody.
We like to affectionately refer to Jeff as the voice of the movement because he has a fantastic voice. He also has a baritone because he's an opera singer. Did you know that? So Jeff is going to be working behind the scenes, curating the questions that are coming in, and you will hear his voice when we pull a question because myself, Peter, and David want to be focused on the conversation and not be pulled off there. So Jeff's going to help us out there. Like I said, we also have Lori and Sharon who are helping us behind the scenes. Next is my esteemed pleasure to introduce my two great friends and colleagues, Peter Docker and David Mead. They worked with Simon to co-author Find Your Why, which I hope a lot of you have in your hands and have had a chance to dissect. And even if you don't, you know, you're still in the right conversation so long as you showed up for the why call. If you showed up for a different call, you might be in the wrong place. We will talk about hows and whats as well, but this is the Finding Your Why call. Peter Docker spent 25 years in the Royal Air Force, rising to the rank of group captain. And he learned much of his first-hand leadership experience from being in service in that line of work. And when he left the Royal Air Force, he was committed to continuing to live a life of service, as we're all designed to do as human beings. And he actually wrote a message in to Mr. David Mead, who at the time, must have been 6-7 years ago, was doing the job that Jeff was doing when we were a smaller, still mighty, but smaller team. And David, I've heard you say that Peter just felt a little bit different. He was showing up to give, showing up not only to give, but to get it so that he could give to others. And lo and behold, a friendship began with the two of you. And Peter, since 2011, you've been speaking and facilitating and coaching and consulting, combining your own experiences and content with leadership as well as Simon's. So there's Peter Docker.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here.
Yeah, and Peter is in the UK. And my other dear friend, Mr. David Mead, who's in Salt Lake. David is the one who actually hired me. So 7 years ago, I wrote into the website and David responded to me, and he thought that I was much older and smarter than I actually am. He asked me to join him in doing the Start With Why podcast, which we we did and got 16 episodes out into the world, and David went out to speak and facilitate, and I filled his shoes doing customer service, which Jeff now does. So I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, Mr. David Mead. So thank you for that. And David, what's really awesome about him is he was a huge champion of this message. He worked for a startup company that really was clear on its why, and unfortunately wasn't as necessarily disciplined in its hows. And though they stood for something good, they weren't living the message of perhaps Simon's second book, Leaders Eat Last. They weren't really creating that culture where people could essentially live what leadership was preaching. And so David is staunchly committed to ensuring that we live what we preach. And he fortunately, Simon and our CEO, Kim, did some consulting at that company, the startup that he was at, and he had an opportunity to join them. You were working mornings and nights for a while with them and joined full time. How many years ago was that, David?
Since 2009 is when I started the part-time thing. So
yeah,
wow. Yeah.
Wonderful. So that's David Mead and Peter Docker. And for those of you that I have not met, I'm Stephen Shedletsky, and I'm our team's chief of staff. So what I love about my job is that I get to ensure that, and I work hard to ensure that what we preach on a stage, we live inside of our company. We have a small but mighty team. We're up to 23 people now, and I get to ensure that we live our message from the inside out. And it is such a treat to be able to be doing this, reaching thousands of people to propel the movement forward and to help you guys be more useful with the work that we love. So pumped that you're all here. So guys, let's start with that poll question to learn more about all the people that are joining us. I think Lori, as our host, Lori behind the scenes, can you pull up those poll questions for us? I'm sure Lori is working frivolously behind the scenes to get those going. Here we go. So our first poll question is, where are you in your why discovery journey? We'll keep this open for about 30 seconds. And let us know, do you know your why? And like I said, Peter Docker, get it to give it. Are you trying to help others find theirs? Are you so ecstatic to know your own why, or maybe not ecstatic, maybe confused, who knows? Do you know your why but want to work on that language? Are you in the process of discovering your why, or you don't yet know your why? So take a second, fill that in. It just gives us great information to know where the majority of you are at in your journey. And Lori, I'll let you close that when we've heard from most of our participants here. Yes, David and Peter, you guys can answer too here. I'm going to put my answer in. All right, Lori, how are we doing? Oh, look at that. Very cool. So 45% of you, 600 people, are in the process of discovering your why. Great. So we can probably talk about some partner stuff, more of the journey. Almost 200 of you not only know your why, but you're inspired to help others find theirs. We love to see that. Yeah, and Lori, we can see it. This is great. And 4% of you know your why. Hopefully at the end of this call, more will be inspired to go on that journey. And wow, a good chunk don't yet know your why. So great, you've come to the right place, and we can definitely help all of you and hopefully address everyone here. Wonderful. So we have one more poll question that we are gonna put out there. It says a lot of you are in the process of discovering your why, so keen to know the tools that you're using. So the next poll question, please, Lori. I see Peter taking notes here. Wonderful. So one more question here. What, if any, why discovery tools have you used? And you can select more than one. So are you using the Find Your Why book? We also have the online course, which Peter and David are a huge part of as well. Perhaps your company has hosted a why discovery workshop with our team, or you've attended. We've just started doing public workshops. So we've done it this year in New York, Chicago, Fort Worth, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Perhaps something else, another tool you're using, or perhaps this is your first step. So we'd love to know what tools, if any, you guys are using on your journey to discover your why. So we'll wait a few more seconds here and see what comes back. Peter, David, any insights you guys have as we're seeing this come in?
I'm just thrilled. There's so many people in the process, and there's a good chunk of folks who are looking forward to helping others to discover their why, which is always a wonderful thing to see.
And if you guys had your hands on the book Find Your Why, there is a section in there by Simon that this is the help others movement, not the self-help movement. So, David, was there something you wanted to throw in as well?
No, I was kind of surprised that there are so many people that that don't know their why yet, or that are still pretty early on in the journey, which I love. So glad that all those folks are here.
Wonderful. All right, Lori, should we do a drum roll and see? A drum roll comes up. We have a lot of people, close to 600 people who have Find Your Why, the book. That's fantastic. Handful in the online why discovery course, which is great. Something else, cool. And this is my first step. Almost 50% of you. Wow, fantastic. Well, we're delighted you guys are here. And what I love most about our organization is that we show up to give. So anything that we can do to help you, we're going to do it. So we hope that this hour conversation puts you in the right direction. And of course, should you have any further questions that we didn't address, we're happy to help as well, whether it's on social media or our website. So I got a couple questions for you guys before we open up the Q&A. The first question I have with you guys is that this is your first book. It's just launched in September. I know there's a lot of people who probably don't yet have their book in the hands, but the reason you wrote the book is to help people discover their why. And I think everyone on this call is here for that, to discover, live, share their why. So I'm interested to know what has been your most meaningful experience now that this book that has been years in the making is out into the world. So I'm curious to know. Peter, do you want to start off?
Sure. I think, like anyone who's experienced writing a book, let alone doing it cooperatively with two other wonderful people, it's a challenge. And you get to the stage where you're wondering if it's ever going to come out. And then, of course, it does. And you see it for that first time in a store somewhere, or going through an airport somewhere. And that's wonderful. I think for me, the thing that completely knocked me over was a little while ago. I bought a new MacBook. And as many of you know, you get a free 30-minute Genius call with somebody who can tell you all the new tricks and tips with that MacBook. And so I had my call, and it's random. You get a genius from anywhere in the world. And this guy came on, and let's just say he was from somewhere else in Europe. And after we'd gone through the session for about 25 minutes, he said, "Can I ask, what line of work are you in?" So I explained to him, and I mentioned Simon, and he went silent at the end of the phone. And I then mentioned Find Your Why, the book. And he said, "I can't believe it." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I've just been approached by the publisher in this particular country to translate your book into another language." And now the likelihood of that happening is so minute, it just blew me away. But I'm so grateful for people like this guy who do translate our words into so many languages. I think there's about 10 different languages the book will come out in if it's not out already. And that just helps us reach people that David and I wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. But yeah, you could have knocked me over with a feather there. It was an awesome moment.
That's fantastic. David?
Yeah, my experience hits a little closer to home. This startup company where I was working in 2009, where I initially met Simon, I worked with a guy there named Todd, and didn't get to know him all that well. But over the years, even after both of us had left that company, we stayed in touch. We did lunch every once in a while. Todd is a life coach. He also helps recovering substance abuse addicts, and this is the work that he does now. And he has been such a champion of the why movement and helping these folks who are recovering. They recover, they get clean, and then they think to themselves like, well, shoot, like, what do I do with the rest of my life? Like, why do I get out of bed every day? And so he's incorporated this into his work. And I've been able to do some why discoveries for some of the folks that he coaches, and it's just been an amazing experience. Todd's story ended up in the book. And so one of the most, it's just kind of interesting how it came full circle, and it's really meaningful. He came over to my house to pick up his copy that had been signed by Simon and by myself, and just to give him that knowing kind of, what he's doing and how meaningful this work is to him, and to be able to give him a copy of a book that he never in his wildest imagination would have guessed he would be a part of. It was just a really, really special experience that I'll remember for a long time.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. So one, a complete stranger, and the other, David, someone you've known for quite a long time. That's really neat. So Jeff, I'm going to pull you out and let us know. I know we had a number of questions that came in leading up to this, and I can see over 40 questions that have already come in our Q&A functionality. So I'm going to ask you, Jeff, if you'll come off mute and just let us know a question we've had that's come in.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. All right. So the first one I want to ask, we got actually a couple questions about this. So some people are having difficult finding a partner to exercise, to do the exercises in the book. Is there any recommendation on how to find a better partner? Should people try and do this by themselves?
Fantastic. So partnering, David, go for it.
Yeah, I'll hop in. So simple answer to the second question, should we try to do this by ourselves? No, please do not try to do it by yourself. The way we sort of, we compare it to therapy, right? We cannot conduct those therapy sessions on our own. Not that this is a therapy session. It's something different than that. However, that outside perspective, that sort of third-party viewpoint is so incredibly important, because what we're looking for in a why discovery is pattern recognition. And in these different stories that we're telling, to be able to pinpoint what are the things that are the same, what is that golden thread that runs through everything. And it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do that for ourselves. And so if you're having a little bit of trouble with that, and I've experienced this as well, I've got a couple of family members that have gone through this process and have said, I don't know who to ask. My suggestion would be, and Peter, I'm interested to hear your take on this, but I think if we can get past the perception that I don't know who to ask, there's nobody I can ask, and not worrying so much about, well, I'm afraid to ask this person because what if they think this is weird, or what if, do I have to know them, extremely well, or it's all of this stuff that I think we kind of let get in the way. If we really kind of take that bigger perspective, that bigger picture, go up to 30,000 feet and say, look, this is something really important to me. I want to be able to get up every day and know the purpose behind the work that I do, or what keeps me busy throughout the day. And sharing that experience that you're going through might just be inspiring to somebody that to the point where they would be more than happy or more than excited to help you do that. And so I think maybe just letting go of the perception that, well, they probably wouldn't do it, or they would think it was strange, or that kind of thing. I think we probably all have a few people in our lives that could serve that purpose. But Peter, I'm curious to hear what your response to that would be.
When people are starting the why discovery journey, because as you say in the book, ideally you need someone that you feel you can trust, but also perhaps not your lifelong partner or someone who's very close to you, because they may already have preconceived ideas of where the stories that you're going to share, where they're going to go. And as one person said to me, when I cross off the list all those people, I'm not left with anyone. Well, I think, as the advice is in the book, think of 5 people that you would be willing to be a partner for, and that's probably your shortlist. But I go a step further. I was absolutely blown away a month or so ago in New Orleans, where I ran a short kickstart to find your why. And there were probably about 60 or 70 people in the room who did not know each other. And yet we just paired people up and they started sharing stories with one another. So if you hear someone perhaps on the Facebook channel maybe who's also looking for a partner, just an idea, maybe you can be in service of one another. And sometimes not knowing that person well, but that person just being willing to be in service for you and you can be for them, it can actually work out pretty well. And certainly within the hour of this short session we did in New Orleans, people walked out arm in arm sometimes with people that they just started to share stories with that previously, an hour before, they didn't know them. So it doesn't have to be somebody you know. It can be somebody who is looking for a partner in just the same way as you. So yes, keep all options open, but definitely have a partner, because even for likes David and me, and I'm sure for you, Stephen, talking within our team has helped us further refine our why too. So yes, that objective view always helps.
Wonderful. And yeah, to your point, Peter, we've seen people even on our Facebook page say, I don't have a partner to work with, and someone's volunteered and said, I'll work with you. So there's another opportunity. We do require a partner for that objective perspective. So we love seeing the ways that people do find partners even within our own community. Jeff, what's next?
All right, we've had about 4 people write in asking, should they read Start with Why before reading Find Your Why?
I'll hop in on this. It's up to you. We're not going to say to people, sit down and read Start with Why from cover to cover first. If you're eager to get on with Find Your Why, then that's fine. We wrote in the front of Find Your Why a sort of synopsis, shorter version of Start with Why. And this isn't about selling books either. If you want to read Start with Why, borrow one. You know, you don't have to go and buy one. I'm sure there's plenty in the libraries around the world too. Having said that, if you want a deeper appreciation of the power of the Golden Circle and how it can help and influence us both in our individual lives and in business too, then Start with Why, the book, does certainly go a little bit deeper. It's entirely up to you. Reading Start with Why is not a prerequisite for launching into Find Your Why, but you will get a deeper appreciation of the ideas if you read both. David, anything to add? Would you agree?
Absolutely. I would compare it to, when you buy a new gadget or a new piece of technology, usually there's like the manual, which is, sometimes online for those people who just love to get into all the detail. And then there's the quick start guide, which a lot of people are like, sweet, let me just tell me how, give me the basics that I need to be able to figure out how to use this thing. So the information that we give around the Golden Circle and Start with Why, the quick start guide is in Find Your Why. So you'll have, and it was written to be a standalone book. So you will have the basic foundation that you need as far as the knowledge about the Golden Circle and the concept of why, if you just pick up Find Your Why. But for those of you who love that level of detail, Start with Why is a good place to go.
Yeah. And we have even seen some comments and book reviews around this is not a Simon Sinek thinky book, and the answer is no, it's not. Start with Why is a Simon Sinek thinky book, and this is Find Your Why, which is a practical how-to guide. That's how this book is written, is to be used as a guidebook. That's why there's room in the margins. So to your point, guys, awesome. Jeff, what do we have next?
All right, let me pull my page back up here. All right, Stephanie W asks, so how do you find your why when you are passionate about several things? Do you have to nail it down to one thing without feeling you are abandoning all those other passions as well?
Wonderful. So the question of passions and why. David, go for it.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. So what I often find is when I'm helping individuals find their whys, that are passionate about many different things, or they're really excited about something for a while, and then the interest changes and they're onto something else. And so they have a hard time figuring out, well, what's my why? It seems to change, or it shifts, or I'm passionate about so many different things that don't seem to have anything common among them. And I think that the skill and the practice of this, and again, the benefit of having that third-party observer, that partner that we urge you so much to have, is that really the goal is to get above all of those things, and rather than figuring out what makes all those things different, all those things that are so seemingly different that I'm passionate about, rising above that and figuring out what is it that ties all those things together. and this is what the why discovery process can really help you do, is to figure out the commonality. And that basically all of those different things that you're passionate about are your whats. And so what we got to figure out is what is the underlying thing that brings all those things together, that when you do one of those things, it lights you up and it fills you up and fulfills you. There's likely commonality among most or all of those things that tie into your why.
Peter, anything to add there?
Yeah, I just add on to that. The process of the why discovery, actually what you're doing is finding your themes, which are your hows, and the one that rises to the top is your why. So, Stephanie, to your point, you may find as you're coming up with all these stories that there do seem to be a number of themes. Well, that's part of the process. And as you go through it, you'll find that of those themes, there'll be 5, maybe 6. And it's the 6th one that rises to the top to become your why. There's no difference between your why and your hows, other than the why is the first amongst equals, if you like. So there are going to be a number of different themes that you discover as you go through your why discovery process. That's part of the process. It's only when you get to the end and follow it all the way through that you figure out which one is the one that is the root of your why. So keep going, I'd encourage you.
I'll offer just 2 points here to close this, guys, around Simon has a great quote on passion, and also our previous point around the value of objectivity. David, what you were saying, that sometimes, when we focus on all the things that we love, we can't find the common thread. Of course we can't, because we can't see the forest from the trees when we're in our own why discovery. And also Simon has the quote of, we only have one passion, but we have many whats to that passion, right? There are many ways we can bring that passion to life, which is our why. So as you both said, wonderful. Jeff, what do we have next?
All right. Madeline L. asks, how do I figure out which memories to use in the why discovery?
Great. So the why discovery process, as you guys may or may not know, is based upon our past. It's who we are and where we come from, which are all about our memories or our stories, which is what is being referred to. So guys, how do you know which ones are the right stories?
Well, I don't think there's a right or wrong story. The thing is, when we ask people to look at the stories from their lives, the most important aspect of those stories is that they are specific. By specific, we mean a story that talks about a particular time, a particular place, particular people. Because when we talk about specific stories, it triggers an emotion in our brain. And that's how those memories are formed in the first place. We remember things because they are in tune with a particular value or belief that we hold. And that's what triggers the memory process. So it's not a case, I think, of deciding which stories to use. The more stories, the better. Provided they are specific stories, that's the most important thing. And then tell as many of those stories to your partner as you feel you need before the themes start to emerge. And if you feel that you really want to tell one other story, then chances are it's really quite important. So tell that story. You don't need to limit yourself, and you certainly don't need to decide which story to leave out and which to tell. The most important thing is that they're specific, and they're likely then to have that nugget of gold that you're looking for, which will point towards the themes, which will point you towards your why. David?
I would just say one other thing, which is go with your gut. Don't overthink it. Whenever a story pops into your mind that's significant, that has meaning for some reason, write it down. Whether you decide to tell it or not, at least record it and have it there. And the last point is, often we think about, well, the stories that I tell or these memories that I'm considering using, they have to be something big or something monumental. Absolutely not. They have to be meaningful and significant. And that can be the smallest little seemingly insignificant thing. But if it means something to you and you remember it, you'll remember it for a reason. So go with your gut.
The one thing I'll add in here, guys, is sometimes we'll see people enter into their why discovery process and they've curated their stories, right? They've strategically picked their stories to prove to their partner what their why is. And if you truly want to find your why, you'll actually be surprised by what experiences and stories you shared. So to the question, the right stories are the ones that come up in the moment that feel that they matter to share, as you both highlighted. Awesome. Wonderful. Jeff, do you have another one that comes up?
Yeah, sure. So on the same themes issue, what if the themes you're coming up with are negative?
Wonderful. So we talk about peaks and valleys, guys, but David, do you want to kick off in terms of those themes?
Sure. There are certain, as we consider those memories and those stories and those experiences from our past, not everyone has had a bunch of really positive, fulfilling, great experiences. And so that's absolutely fine. We can work with the challenges, with the things that have been tough. And what we tell people, or what we seem to find, is that the negative themes are a representation of something that was missing. When we're not feeling at our best, when we're not fulfilled, when we're not finding meaning, and there's that overarching theme, it's because something that we need, or something that would fulfill us if it were there, is not there. And so often it sort of represents the opposite of what we need in order to feel fulfilled. And so we can still use those. Those are still valuable stories. This is not all about just talking about all the positive, wonderful experiences. Obviously, a why is positive, it's generative, it's supposed to be inspiring. And at the same time, those stories that we sometimes perceive as challenging or negative, or the themes that seem to come out as a negative theme, simply can kind of be the opposite of something else that we would need in order to feel fulfilled.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Some of you who've heard me speak may have heard me tell the story of Dylan, a friend of my children. And Dylan was almost killed in a motorbike accident. Now, at the time, that was an extremely distressing, negative story, if you like. However, the positive that he's drawn out of that in terms of why he does what he does has been extraordinary. So all of these stories, we can often find something positive from them in terms of what we were able to go on and do or go on to be. And then it just acts as further reformation or reaffirmation of who we are and our values and what we believe. So all of these stories, whether positive or negative, do help us point to that why. And sometimes, again, it's the partner who can identify the positive points, if you like, from that negative story, who we became, how we grew from that particular event. So again, your partner is your friend.
Yeah. One of the things we talk about, guys, when we run these workshops is you don't have to share something you don't want to share. But if it feels like a little bit of a risk to share, it's most likely a good thing to hop into. So in terms of which stories to share. Lori let me know, guys, that we are receiving a number of questions in terms of programs for business. Of course, if Jeff pulls up a question about it, we can chat about it, but just wanted to let you guys know that if you are interested about what programs we do run for business, you're more than welcome to check out our website, startwithwhy.com. And if you'd like, you can submit a speaking or workshop request, and someone from our Inspired Solutions team will get back in touch. So that's just to mention that. So I remembered to do it. I wanted to do it right now. Jeff, what else do you have coming through the queue, my friend?
All right, so we've got a lot of questions asking about how they can either apply their why to their current job or apply their why to finding a job.
So I've just discovered my why. I have clarity of what my why is. And my question is, how do I apply it to my current job, or how do I find a new one that's more in line potentially with my why? Who'd like to kick us off?
Well, I'll start. I think the wonderful thing about discovering your why is that once you've discovered it and you've put it into that single sentence, it then gives you a new lens to look through at everything that you do in your life. And until you've discovered that why, it's difficult to figure out how you're going to use it and what difference it can make. I tell the story of John, the porter in a hospital, and the hospital was very clear on its why as an organization, which was around enabling their communities to thrive. And John, he just pushed people on patients on trolleys, on gurneys. That's what he did. But then he obviously had discovered his why, because his interpretation of what he did through the lens of that why was that he saved people's lives. As he said to me quite proudly, unless you push those people on those trolleys, those gurneys, from the emergency room up to the operating theatre, then the doctors wouldn't be able to do their job, and those people would often die. So, he'd worked that out through knowing the overarching why of the organization, and through having insight into his own why. So quite often these things just start to smack you in the face when you've got that why sentence. You can start using it as a filter for everything. And it's actually, well, for me as well, times when I'm feeling down or a bit off or a bit low, I can reach for that why of mine, and it's all about enabling people. And I can just have myself go out and enable somebody through a conversation, somebody you meet on the street. It doesn't have to be big. Often the most significant thing is very small. So in my experience, it quickly becomes apparent how you can use this in your everyday life, regardless of whether it's your job or just linking with friends or family, or in a social event. So David, over to you.
Sure. I would say that, sometimes a why may point directly to some sort of, job or some sort of industry, and it might be a very clear tie. So, for example, if my why were to share knowledge so that the eyes of people can be open to the world around them, like that might be perfect if I'm looking for a teaching job, for example, right? Like that might just smack of elementary school teacher. Or it might not. Like if that's not my passion, I can still share knowledge so that I open the eyes of the people to the world around them. I can do that in any situation that I'm in. What we're finding more and more is that it's less about finding a why to be able to find a particular job or a particular position. This is a very human endeavor where when we know who we are when we are at our natural best, as Peter says, we can do that at work. We can do that in the community. We can do that with friends or at home. And the opportunity that we have is to do that even in the existing job that we have. So just because we discover our why and we don't see a natural tie between the words that we came up with and the current role that we have, it doesn't mean we have to quit and go look for something else. It just means that we have an opportunity to show up in a little different way at work and to be that best version of ourselves for the people around us, and to create that environment through who we are being, because we now are conscious of our why and the contribution that we make and the impact that we have on the lives of the people around us.
I would just add a footnote to that, which is our why is a route to leadership. Often we're talking about leadership in terms of an organization, a team, or a company. But in English, we have that phrase, to lead one's own life. And that takes courage. And when you take your why statement and use it as a filter for everything you do, it's the first step, really, to be able to have that courage. That's the source of courage to lead your life. And leading your life, standing up for what it is you believe in, and being the leader sometimes that you wish you had, regardless of the situation you're in, whenever you're interacting with people, you have a choice now. You can lead your life through your why and support those around you and do what we're biologically hardwired to do, to support others.
So both to your points, guys, our why is a perspective. So it can take the current job we're in and we can move towards the things we love and try to get off our plate the things that drain us or that we don't love. And the beauty is somebody else loves that. That is somebody else's golden circle, their why and hows. David, what I loved that you shared, what was that why example? To share knowledge, what was it?
Oh, shoot, I don't know. To share knowledge so that the eyes of others can be open to the world around them, something like that.
So I see that's not your why statement, but it's an example you gave. But that could be a photojournalist. It could be so many whats, right? So I love that you gave the example of it could be perfect for an elementary school teacher, but again, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters why you do it.
The why is the context.
Yes.
So the content of our life. And context gives meaning to everything that we do, all of that content. So that's the way to look at it.
The last thing I'm going to say, guys, and then we have a special request that I'll ask in a second, is sometimes our why is aligned, but our hows aren't, right? And hows are just as important. So our good friend Jen Waldman, who does speaking and facilitating for us as well, she's taught me that when she feels out of balance, the first place she often looks is her hows, right? And our hows are the actions we take to be at our best, our values in action. And oftentimes she'll say her why is aligned, but there's a relationship or a system or something that isn't meeting one of her hows. And that's one of the places she goes. And Peter, as you said, when we do this why discovery process, the first thing we get is our hows. And then one or two tend to rise higher, which are candidates for our why. That said, guys, we've had a number of requests to hear each of our why statements and maybe even a couple of our hows, if you feel up to it. So David, do you want to share your why and maybe one or two of your hows?
Sure. So my why is to propel people forward so that they can make their mark on the world. And just blowing that out a little bit, the thing that just fills me up, fires me up, gets me going is when I can help somebody just be a little bit better than they were the day before. I'm not talking about monumental change. I'm just talking about just that one step forward. And the word propel is extremely important to me because I'm not physically pushing, I'm not pulling. I think of a propeller, which just causes you to move. It's not physically touching you. So it's just, in a way, just creating the environment or creating the space for people to be able to take that one step closer to where they want to be so that they can do the amazing things that they're meant to do in the world. A couple of my hows that really stick out for me, learn from every experience. I'm a huge learner. And if I don't learn, I can't help propel others. The other one is to see the big picture. I have to understand the context in which I'm working for me to be able to be at my best. So those are a couple of the hows that really stick out for me.
Okay, for me, my why is to enable people to be extraordinary so they can do extraordinary things. So to enable is the root of that. And I can bring this to life through so many different things, and I have done in my life, it's the root of my why, but enabling people is the key. I'd like to say more about this extraordinary piece though, because it's about enabling people to do extraordinary things that are extraordinary for them. And so these, again, don't have to be huge things, but extraordinary in their eyes, be able to go that extra step, be able to achieve more than they thought was ever possible. And actually, I've just reached over. We talk about having a symbol, and this was a gift from the wonderful Start With Why team. It's a compass, and if you look on my website, there's a story behind the compass, but this is a representation of my why, and it reminds me that I'm about enabling people and helping people find their way to achieve more than they thought possible. My hows, actually, I share some of them with David. Certainly seeing the big picture side of it. One of my other hows is to simplify. I like to try and simplify it because, as Leonardo da Vinci said, simplicity is the greatest sophistication. It's not always easy, but if we can simplify things, then everyone can understand and everyone can share. And I hope that we've done a little bit of that in this book. And another one is to go the extra mile, to do that extra piece of work, to push a little bit further, to help people just a little bit more. So that's one of my hows. And just because we've got these hows written down doesn't mean to say we're perfect all the time. It's always work in progress. And Steve, I think you bring up a great point from Jim Wellman. Sometimes we're out of line with our hows and we've just got to work on them a little bit more. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Good. I love, Peter, you got the compass, you got the book. I'm wondering what else you're going to pull out next. You got all the things next to you. That's great. I can share my why. My why is to engage people in meaningful ways so that we more deeply connect. I believe that when we more deeply connect to ourselves, the people around us and the world around us, we are going to live in a more fulfilled world. So that's what drives and inspires me. And a handful of my hows, I love communicating. So articulate what we feel, see, and know. Communicating to get on the same page and stay on the same page. I love that. Look forward, which to me is optimism. It's also why I wear talking about symbols, which is a nice way to live our why. I have orange shoelaces on multiple pairs of my shoes. That way when I catch myself looking down at the floor in a less confident position, I see this bright orange, which reminds me to look forward and to choose a positive perspective. Keep it fresh and new. I love variety. And another one is give to the hungry. I love feeding people who are hungry for more and who want to improve, which is why I love this very call that we're on, because everyone here is hungry for this and wants to do more and give more. So I love that. All right, Jeff, we haven't heard your voice in far too long. What else do you have, my friend?
All right. Annalise T and Kurt W both ask, can you have more than one why, and will it change over time?
Great. So before we dive into that answer, we do have about 15 minutes left, maybe less. If we don't get to your question, we will still curate all the questions that have come in, and we'll try to provide an answer, whether it's a video or something. So, and more webinars to come in 2018. So that question, guys, who wants to go first? David.
Yeah, I'll go first. And I'll try to be as brief as I can because I see the number of questions continuing to rise. I want to get to as many as we can. Annalise and Kurt, thank you for the question. We only have one why. And again, this is a matter of perspective, right? So oftentimes we think one of the big things that we see is that people say, well, my family is my why. Your family is actually one of your whats. It's one of the opportunities that you have to show up and live your why. Your why is much bigger than that. The way that I like to think about it is we are who we are wherever we are. And that is at work, at home, with our friends, in the community. Anywhere that we are, our why is the same. We are ourselves. We are our best selves, no matter what situation we're in. At least we have the opportunity to be. We're not always. So we only have one why, for work, for home, for everywhere. And I will leave the second half of the question of, does our why ever change, to Peter.
Okay, so the words we use in the why can morph over time, but the feeling behind them doesn't change. So for example, the first part of my why, to enable people, it used to be to enable others. And then I changed others to people because in my mind, people included myself too. And sometimes for me to better enable others, perhaps after a busy traveling schedule or whatever, I need just to enable myself a little bit. So the word people included myself too. So yes, the words might morph over time. I think, David, you've changed one or two of your words over the few years we've known one another.
Yeah, just one or two.
And that's okay. It's the feeling behind it. The words, as we know, the why comes from our limbic part of the brain, responsible for all behavior, all decision making, and yet it's got no capacity for language. So at the very best, our why statement is an approximation, an expression of the feeling that lies behind our why. So it's quite likely that the words will change, but the feeling won't. And to David's point, we only have one why only.
Yeah, and words are imperfect. Words are a representation for meaning. So I've even heard some people, in organizations or individuals say, that's not a word, you can't use it. People have actually made up words to put into their why statement that means something to them. So it's all based on our stories, and each word, like an accordion, when we open it up, they have deep significance and meaning. So we have one why and one why only. It covers all the whats we love. And though the language can change, the meaning and essence of the why is the same. Peter, did you have more to add on?
Yeah, I just add to that because in a why statement, there's only a few words, and those words that we use often have so much more meaning than if we look those words up in a dictionary. And so over the years, my why, the meaning of those words, it's taken on more meaning day after day as I do all I can to live my why. So in a way, the words are becoming less important. It's that feeling behind them.
And words are a tool to help you live it. And just one quick story here, guys. When my daughter Sophie was born, a mentor of mine said to me, "You have a new why." And I went, same why, now just a bigger platform, a bigger stage to go live it. It means more now. So huge life events or even tragedies don't change our why. It just gives us a new perspective lens platform to live it. Jeff, what else do we got? We have about 10 more minutes, so let's see if we can do certainly a couple more questions here.
All right. Jonathan G asks, what are some signals that may indicate you have deviated from your why?
Great question. What are some signals you've deviated from your why? Peter, you're off mute, so I'll go to you first.
Yeah, it will feel wrong. It will. You know, your why it comes from our limbic brain. It's a feeling. It's based on feelings. We know when we are acting in a way that's not consistent with what we believe. You know, if we have a conversation with someone, or we act in a certain way, we will feel uncomfortable. Yeah, we're emotional animals. This is how we are hardwired, and so our emotions are going to tell us. It's front and center when we're acting outside of our why. Of course, the why can also give us a way to choose to act as well, so as we can be proactive. That's the idea of it. But yeah, I would say you will know when you're acting outside of your why, and it'll be a very good reminder. David?
Yeah, just to tack on a little bit to that, which is, you know, sometimes we have to make a decision that throws us out of balance a little bit. There's an immediate need, you know, we lose our job, we got to have money to pay rent. And so we go get a job that maybe isn't perfectly in line with our why, right? We will feel that that's not the place for us. It's like, oh, this is not the most fulfilling place for me to be. And yet, just in the immediate short term, that's what we need in order to take care of our family, pay our bills, whatever it is. The beauty of that is that we recognize that, and the goal is to get back into balance. And even if it's not something that extreme, even if we just, you know, have an experience like Peter talked about where it just doesn't feel right and we know it, it's a great trigger for us to realize, well, what do I need to do to get back in balance? We will not be at our best every single day. We don't perfectly live our why every single day, but when we get those little cues from our limbic brain that let us know that something just doesn't feel right, that's a good reminder for us to figure out, again, use our why and hows as filters, figure out what isn't right, what's not jiving here, and how do we work to get back into balance so that we can get that feeling of fulfillment and meaning.
The very simple and neat thing is that everything we do, everything we say, either adds to or takes away from our why. Even if we don't have words for our why, you know, our friends will see us acting out of character is quite often what we all will say if people are doing something that seems wrong for who they are. So everything we say, everything we do either adds to or takes away from our why. And with it, we add to the trust and loyalty that people feel towards us. So when we've got that why statement, which is the contribution and the impact that we can make in the world, it gives us a really good steer on the choices we can make to always add to that why, bring it to life, add to the trust and loyalty that people feel towards us.
I'll even add on, guys, the perspective, Peter, just to what you just said around, you know, it's clarity of why, discipline of how, and consistency of what, right? And one of the things that's consistency of what is, yes, indeed, the friends you choose. And so one of the things that happens when we discover our why is we really... get clear on this is who I am and this is who I'm not, and we might actually create some meaningful changes. And sometimes friends will go, you aren't who you are and you've changed. And it's an opportunity for you to check in with yourself and with the people who you love and trust around what makes you proud and what makes you embarrassed, that internal compass. If you're proud, chances are you're living your why. If you're not proud or embarrassed, chances are you're not. And so even as we shift, some people who we considered friends because we've known them for a long time, from college or whatever, you know, as we evolve and live into our why, sometimes we have to be very mindful of the relationships we choose as well. Any comments to that as well? Or seeing a couple nodding heads, which means I might be saying something decent.
There's just one thing, maybe not directly related to what you said, but this idea that we all have a why, whether we have words for it or not.
Hmm.
And we all know when we're living it and when we're not, which is this, again, this gut feeling that we get that we are doing something that matters, that we're finding fulfillment, something that we love, something that we, are passionate to wake up and do every day. If that's how we're feeling, we're living in line with our why. And now the opportunity is just to put words to that so that we can do other things that bring that same feeling. But I want to make sure that nobody on the call thinks that they have to have a why statement in order to have a why. The why statement is simply just an articulation of that feeling so that we can more consciously and intentionally do it moving forward, rather than having it happen by accident.
Awesome. And David, to the point you shared previously, this was a quote I read of Simon's about 7 years ago, which inspired me to make some big changes. You said sometimes, you purposefully or cognizantly or consciously make a choice that might be out of alignment, but it's for a specific reason. So there's a quote of Simon's around the difference between sacrifice and torture. How sacrifice is we do something for a known period of time for a good, a common good. But if one of those two pieces are missing, either the known period or the common good, it can easily become torture. So it's okay to consciously make a sacrifice in order to achieve something better and even a known time frame. And if not, it could easily become torture. One thing I'm getting from Jeff is a request. The 3 ingredients to live our why, right? We call it start with why, not end with why. We start with our clarity of why, our discipline of how, and our consistency of what. So clarity of why, if we do not know what our why is, we cannot.
I'll hop in here for Stephen, where he looks like we're having some internet issues here. So clarity of why, what Stephen was saying is if we don't know, if we're not clear on what our own why is, there's no way for us to live it or to share it with others. The discipline of how, that second piece, and again, the hows are the actions that we take, the daily behaviors that we engage in to make sure that we are living our why. And if we're not being disciplined in doing that, and the reason we say discipline is because starting with why and living that is not always the easy decision to make. Sometimes we have to do things that will hurt us in the short term, but when we act in alignment with our hows, that naturally allows us to be at our best, which allows us to live our why. So it's having discipline of how. And the third piece, the consistency of what, means that everything that we do, our job, our relationships, the way we communicate, anything that is a manifestation or a representation of the things we say or the things we do must be consistent with what we believe. And this is where authenticity comes in. We talk a lot about that and how this is, how we make friends, how we date, how we get married, all these things, the relationships that we create, the trust that we build, is because we can tell that the things that people are saying and doing are in line with what they believe. That's what consistency of what means. So Stephen, with that, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, David. Good thing I'm on a call with you guys. You can have my back when internet conks out. So thanks there. So we are at time. I can imagine that you likely asked a question. If you're listening to this, you perhaps asked a question that didn't get answered, but we will work as a team to look through those, see if there are any common themes, and we'll shoot some videos or something and try to get those questions out to you and into the world, or steer you to a resource that already exists. Before we thank everyone for joining us, I just want to see if you guys have any final words in terms of discovering and living your why. Peter?
I'd just say that it takes courage to learn your why, to discover it. It takes courage to live it, because it's about standing up for what it is you believe. And when you choose to take on that courage, to find that courage and to go through the process and get to even an imperfect why statement, you can then start to be intentional about making those choices that are going to make you feel fulfilled, that are going to attract trust and loyalty from others. And it really is a huge reward. So I just encourage everybody who started this journey to continue down the path, although it will be tricky at times. David?
I would just say, you know, a lot of people, us included, get really inspired and really excited when we have this conversation. And so the tendency sometimes is to say, "Ooh, I want to find my why and start living it as quickly as possible." Um, I would urge you to be patient with yourself. This is a process. This takes time. For some people, it comes very naturally, very quickly. For other people, myself included, it took me 6 years to come up with the right words for my why. The feeling never changed, but I never had the words that I loved. And that's okay. It's not about having the perfect words. It's about knowing what it feels like and making it actionable. And so as long as you have that, be patient. The right words will come, or the words that feel the most authentic to you will come. Don't try, there's no shortcut for this. So be patient.
And that's the guy who wrote the book on it. So if it takes you less than 6 years, you're doing just fine. I just want to share, in terms of closing words, that one of the things I love is the thing that's the common thread between all of our work and Simon's work, which is this notion that together is better. There was someone who wrote in asking if they could, I believe they're in Switzerland, if they could tune into the webinar, which I hope they're still on right now, and actually have it in a conference room and have a number of people join them and watch them. To which our answer is yes, 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 yes. This is the Help Others movement. And that indeed, if you want to go anywhere with this, go together, right? The proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So if you care about this stuff, just find one other person who cares about it too and help them, and they'll help you. Lori just put in methods to find your why. So we're getting a lot of requests. So what methods are there to find your why? One of the things we have is the Friends exercise, which you can find on our website, startwithwhy.com. There's the book that these guys wrote. There's the online course that these guys have. But truly, we also have live events, and you can write into our website and check that out. But the fun trick is take out a napkin, draw peaks and valleys. What are the experiences you've loved? What are the experiences in your life throughout your entire life, from your earliest childhood memory up until this very moment, that were also challenging, and share those experiences one by one with someone who you trust, and your themes will emerge. If you want a bit more guide rails, or a bowling alley with those guides on the side, we have tons of tools that are all sourced to help. So guys, thank you so much, Peter and David, for giving of your time and for sharing this with a couple thousand people who joined us, which is fantastic.
And can I say, Stephen is this guy is the voice on the audio version of Find Your Why, so which I know is very popular. With a voice like that, well, we've got some good voices on this team. What can I say?
Yeah.
But thank you, Shelley.
They say I have a face for radio, so there it is. Thank you so much for the over 2,000 people who joined us. The movement is strong. We show up every day to serve others, and we know that those of you who are still on this call do the very same thing. So thank you so much for joining this Finding Your Why live webinar. We'll see you again in 2018, that's for sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.